This week on Getting Up to Speed is a series of special interviews covering the life of Morrie Williams as well as Williams Motorsports. We got a chance to talk with several personalities, a lot of drivers, as well as longtime crew chief Ashley Smith of some of their best memories and stories about Morrie. And so this week is dedicated to that great person whom we will be honoring in September 30th at King Speedway, powered by Keller Motors in Hanford, California on Saturday night. The next guest in line was the first ever driver for Williams Motorsports, and the team wasn't even number 0. We're going to be talking to longtime racer Doug Gandy and how Williams Motorsports became, why Morrie Williams decided to start a race team, and much, much more in those first few years that the team existed. That's coming up next after these messages. Dave's Home Supply specializes in cabinets, flooring, and countertops. Visit their website at daveshomesupply.com to look at products, services, financing, and even a free estimate. Are you looking for bookkeeping, payroll, or income tax services? Then check out the folks at For You Simple Bookkeeping. They are a licensed tax preparer throughout the entire United States. For more information, click on the link in the description. This broadcast is brought to you by Meat Freaks Jerky Club. Get the best jerky the world has to offer straight to your door by visiting meatfreaksjerkyclub.com. Pick your box and plan, tell them where to ship, and receive and enjoy. Log on to meatfreaksjerky.com and use promo code SPEED. Well, he's the first driver to compete for Williams Motorsports way back when, and it's Doug Gandy. Doug, you had the privilege of being the first driver for Katie and Morrie Williams, and man, that's such an iconic team, and you were there for the very origin of it.
I was. It didn't mean much then, but now it means a lot. You know, we were just a couple of guys trying to go racing back then, and then it turned into, wow, well, that's like you said, an iconic team that I got to drive for and be the first guy. When I met Morrie in 85, when I moved to Oakhurst, he went to work for him, and I lasted about 3 or 4 weeks and decided that being a garbage guy wasn't what I was cut out to be. And so I quit and went on to other things. And then, I think it was in 87, a guy by the name of Tom Wheeler, who I had gone to school with up here at Sierra High. Him and I kind of got reintroduced right after I moved here, and he was running a stock car and wanted me to help him. And I told him that I didn't do stock cars, but if he ever showed up with a sprint car, then I'd give him a hand. So that year he bought a sprint car and asked me to help him. So I did and got him going in that. And he called me up one day and he says, I'm trying to get Morrie Williams to be a sponsor of my car. And he said, there's a race in Porterville this weekend and I can't go. I've got a control burn on the ranch that I have to take care of. And will you drive the car, go get Morrie and drive the car for me? And I said, sure. So got that all arranged, and we went to Porterville, and we ran pretty good, ran in the dash, and was running up front in the main event when something in the rear end broke. And when I rolled in the pits after that, Morrie was just jumping up and down, and he says, we got to get us one of these. And everybody got a good laugh out of that. And so we took the car back to Tom and fixed it for him and gave it back to him. And Morrie went to I think it was the next race Morrie went to. And then he said, you want to go with me? He said, I'm going to go see if I can find one of these cars. So we did. We looked all over, and he finally ended up buying a car from M&L Plumbing. And we ran that car for them, from them. We ran that the rest of that season. I think it was I want to say 87, but it might have been 88. We ran like the last 3 or 4 races with their motor in the car. After Morrie bought the car, they let us use the motor. And then we built our own motor for it. And that's kind of how we got started. You know, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and at the time, it wasn't the 0. It was a number that you had picked.
Right. Yeah. When we finally got the car, Morrie says, you know, it had 14 on it from M&L Plumbing. Fred Eade, who owned that, it had his number on it, and Morrie says, you know, we talked about a number, and we came up with 17, the number that I had been running all of my career. So we put that on there, and a funny story about the motor. Morrie had his old number 32 hardtop under a lean-to up at his place on Road 222. It had been sitting there for about 10 or 12 years, covered up with a tarp under a lean-to. And we went up there. We needed a motor, so we went up there and we drug that car out. 3 of the tires still had air in it. We drug it out, hauled it to his shop, and pulled the motor out of it with a garbage truck, with one of the forks on the front of a garbage truck,
mm-hmm.
and put it on engine stand, pulled the 6.2s off because it was an old Kearney Bull car. And we pulled the 6.2s off, and the class we were running with the California Pro Sprint, and they were a 4-barrel sprint car.
Okay.
So we bought an alcohol 4-barrel and put that on it, checked the bearings, you know, pulled the pan, looked at the bearings, and Morrie was a pretty frugal old guy, and he said, you know what, them look pretty good. Let's run them. So we did. And we won a few races with that motor, and then finally it did give up in spectacular fashion, and he had to build a whole new motor then. But we ran it for 2 or 3 years, and I drove the car for him until I believe it was through 92.
Okay.
Might have been 93, but I think it was 92. And then Darren Howard drove it for a very short time. And then I'm not sure who took over after that, but Jimmy Carr came along. I think he drove it before Peter Murphy did.
Yeah, just before, yes.
Yeah, I think when Jimmy Carr got out of it, then Pete got in it. Pete drove it for quite a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dennis Moore Jr. was in it, and J.A. was in it. You know, there's a lot of good guys in that car, which made it pretty famous. Won a lot of races with it.
Yeah,
you know.
Bud Kading and yeah.
Yeah, Bud drove for like 6 years, I think, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Well, and the theme with talking to a bunch of those guys is the same. Is Morrie? You said it, frugal, but he was very resourceful at the same time and very mechanically inclined as well. Like he could fix anything on the race car, which is a full package, really cool deal for a car owner.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. There was nothing on that car that he couldn't fix. And a lot of times, instead of buying a new part, we fixed the old ones.
Yeah.
You know, we repaired the frame, numerous times, even after the car became a legend, so to speak. You know, we'd get in a wreck somewhere and take it home and take it apart and get the porta power out and jack the frame back into position and go racing again. You know, so yeah, Morrie could do it all, from motor to frame to everything. You know?
So what were some of the events that you guys, or some of the tracks that you guys would travel to around that time in the late 80s, early 90s? Was it pretty much Central Valley, or did you guys travel outside of that area?
Well, when I was driving, we pretty much stayed in the Central Valley. Don't really know why, but we did. We ran Tulare, and Hanford and Porterville, I think once, and Oildale down in Bakersfield. We run those tracks. I think we might have went to Merced one time. I don't recall, but Tulare, Hanford, and Oildale were the three main tracks that we ran out. And then after I drove the car, then they started traveling, and Morrie got Ashley Smith to be the crew chief, and then the thing really took off, after that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, something that is so really cool that I've seen personally at the Morrie Williams Memorial is that you driving the 32 hardtop. And when I say driving, it's not just putting around. Like you get up on the wheel and with the elbows up.
Yeah, I drive it as hard as I can and as hard as they'll let me.
Sure.
It's just I've driven a couple of cars for different guys that belong to the Legend of Kearney Bowl Association.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, it's just an exhibition and we're not out there to race. Well, I asked the car owner one time that I was driving for about that. I said, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to just go out there and put around? He says, it's got a throttle for a reason. Okay. So that was all I needed. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to race. And some of the other guys did too. It's hard for a racer to get in a race car and go putt around.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably not going to happen if you get more than one guy.
Yeah.
It's going to become competitive, and it always has for me. Even, I've driven the 56 car a couple of times for Sheila and Carrie Fazig out of Sacramento. And that's a pretty iconic car too, although it's a reproduction. But I've driven that a few times, and I didn't go out there and putt around in it. That's not me.
So the 32, the modified hardtop, that's all original Morrie, or is that a rebuild?
No, that's all original. Okay. That's just like they built him. He had a partner named Gene Miller.
Okay.
And they had moved up here to Oakhurst together, I think in like 57. And they started a shop. And then Morrie and Gene went separate ways, and Morrie started the garbage company.
Okay.
And but they had one of them drove paved tracks, and one of them drove the car on asphalt tracks.
Okay.
And go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, you go ahead. It's totally fine.
I don't know which one drove on which, but one of them drove pavement, one of them drove dirt, and they had a blue car, and then they built the red one. I think the blue one was first, and then their updated version was this red number 32 that they have now.
Okay.
And it's an all metal body. It's just exactly like it rolled off the racetrack, with the exception, I guess they had the motor rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So other than that car is just like it raced at Kearney Bowl.
Well, and that's the car you were talking about that was under that lean-to, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. I'm putting the pieces together.
Yeah. Well, after we pulled the motor out of it, then it just kind of got shoved aside,
mm-hmm.
And just ignored,
mm-hmm.
until, I don't know, a few years ago,
Yeah. Well, it looks like it's in terrific shape. Most definitely. It's not, normally when you think of an original car, I've seen a lot where they look kind of, not rust buckets, but, aged, but this is just it's like a museum piece almost.
Yeah. It hasn't been restored. It's been wiped down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. It sat most of the time of its life was indoors. It sat for a little while outside right after we pulled the motor out of it, probably for a year or so, and then Morrie put it in the shop, and that's where it's lived it the rest of its life, was inside. So, that is the reason for it to look like it does, I believe.
When I've talked with a lot of people that have been a part of the Williams Motorsports team, whether it be Ashley as, the crew chief or even the drivers, there's just a continued theme of Morrie was just such a wonderful car owner to race for. And would you agree with that statement?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he was, you couldn't really ask for a better car owner. He didn't, he never said much. He never suggested you drive a different way or, anything like that. He just sat back and let you do your thing. And, that was it. You couldn't ask for that much nicer guy. And even in life, other than the race car, he was that way. He was just a genuinely nice guy.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of people have said too. Like he wasn't a demanding car owner. He, I sound like a broken record in some of these, but go out, do the best you can. But we're here to do a job, but we're also here to have a good time as well. Like he wanted to make sure that everyone was enjoying themselves while also getting the best results possible in a non-demanding way, which is, I'm not saying that things are better or worse or anything, but there is a culture where there is demand, high demand.
Oh, absolutely there is. There certainly is. And Morrie was not that way at all. It was like he didn't want to give up in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't stop. Even if you were having a bad night, he wouldn't say, screw it, let's load up and go home. We stayed there till the end and worked on the car until they turned the lights off if we had to,
sure,
to get it ready.
Yeah.
So, he was pretty devoted to that race car when we were at the races, and even when we weren't, obviously, because we had to work on it during the week. But no, it was he wouldn't quit. He wasn't a give up kind of guy, and he didn't. If you did, then he'd have a talk with you. If you didn't want to do something,
sure.
Well, how come?
Yeah. Well, and he's also famous for his long pole rides or drives, I guess, after the races to either the next race or back to the shop. Did you have any experiences like that? I guess running in the Central Valley, you guys weren't too far from Oakhurst, but he was a guy that didn't matter how long it took. He'd be driving a long amount of distance.
Yeah, we went home. I can remember, I think, one time that we spent the night in Bakersfield.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, every race we went to, we drove home afterwards. And then later on, after I left the team, I just kind of quit racing altogether and spent time raising my family, and which has been neglected, a fair bit. And then probably about 2000, maybe 4 or 5, I kind of got reintroduced to the racing scene, and I drove the car hauler for them for several years. And even then, we'd go somewhere to the race, we'd drive home afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And I guess tell me, 'cause I'm curious, what was the setup like as far as the transport, the trailer, when you guys first started? It wasn't a lavish, Featherlight enclosed, was it?
Oh no, it was anything but.
That's what my guess was going to be. So.
Yeah, it was anything but that. We borrowed a little open trailer for part of the first year, I think it was, and then he built or he bought a trailer from a friend of his, Lonnie Brannon, who was a big help in the race team. He bought a trailer from him that was the same one he has now, that's sitting there in the yard, and we will probably use that trailer during the Morrie Williams race to bring the car down there on. So it's just an open trailer with it's actually pretty elaborate for an open trailer because it's got a walk-in box, and you can carry stuff indoors in the little box on the front of the trailer, and tire rack above the front of the car. So,
wow, that's really cool. That's such kind of a full circle thing with original pieces, bringing original pieces.
Right, exactly. He did buy an an enclosed trailer one time at the swap meet in Hanford, and it was about I would have to say 24 feet maybe. Mm-hmm. The car had fit in it, and you could stand the wing up behind the car, and all the tires went on a rack out on the front of the trailer. So everything was inside except for the tires. And I don't know why we quit using that trailer, but we used it for 3 years, and then I don't know. I don't remember the end of that trailer. I do know one time, this is kind of a funny story about that trailer. We were going to Bakersfield, cruising along, and we towed it with that 67, or maybe it's a 68 Suburban, mm-hmm. that he's got that Matt painted the trailer to match it. And Morrie and his buddy Gene, or his now wife Katie, they'd ride in the front. My wife and I would ride in the second seat, and my two boys would ride in the third seat, mm-hmm. or in the way back behind the third seat there was room. And all the way to Bakersfield, one of the boys, he'd look out the back window and look at them tires. He said, "Dad, those tires are going to fall off." And I think he was probably about 5 or 6 years old then.
Okay.
And he said, "Dad, those tires are going to fall off. They're bouncing all over." I said, "No, don't worry about it. There's a chain there, and it's holding them all on. Pretty soon, Dad, those tires are going to bounce off." "No, everything's good, son." And this went on for, 45 minutes or so on the way to Bakersfield. And we get to Bakersfield, and the first off-ramp that we come to that we're going to get off on, Morrie starts slowing down, and the car in front of him kind of stops a little abruptly, and he put on the brakes a little bit harder, and all of a sudden there was this terrible noise on top of the Suburban.
No.
Well, the tires came off.
All together.
All together. There was about 3 or 4 tires rolled across the top of that Suburban, down over the hood, out across this 4-lane road, through a red light. Nothing got hit. Not one tire got hit. One of the right rears rolled through a gas station, and the owner of the gas station had a Corvette, and he had it parked over against a brick wall, and this great big right rear is heading towards that Corvette. And I was running as fast as I can to get to it, and I caught it it was barely moving by the time it got that Corvette, but it was still going to hit it. And I grabbed it just as it hit that Corvette, and it left a tread pattern in the dust on the door of that Corvette. I don't even think we went and told the guy inside. I think we just rolled the tire. Well, we've got an off ramp and 4 lanes of traffic stopped.
Sure, sure.
With these tires.
Got places to go and people to see. So.
That's right. So we just, we got our mess all cleaned up and went on our way. And that was one of the trips. Another funny story, if you don't mind.
No, that's totally fine.
The first time we went to Bakersfield, that was the time we spent the night.
Okay.
And we went to the hotel and got checked in, and then we got to go to the racetrack, and nobody knows where it's at. So we're on the freeway heading back north, and a guy towing a stock car passed us. And think it was Katie that said, well, just follow that guy. He's going to the races. And so we started following that guy, and we followed that guy right to his house. He wasn't going to the races that night. He was just moving the race. He was moving the race car over to his buddy's place.
Okay.
And we followed him right to there, and then we felt kind of stupid, but we had to ask him, where's the racetrack at? And he pointed us in the right direction, and we finally got there.
Well, that threw me off. I'm like, oh, he's going to Mesa Marin at the pavement track or something.
Yeah, no, he was going to his friend's house with his race car. Just happened to be on a Saturday, and we were looking for a racetrack. So.
Yeah. Gosh, you mentioned those, 20-something feet enclosed trailers, and I remember when the Outlaws first came to where I live in Cottage Grove in the early 90s, and it was like a Formula One team showed up kind of deal. Like, you mentioned the painted trailers, to match the truck, or like the team uniforms, and it was like, holy wow, this is crazy. Oh yeah,
it was amazing the first time you'd see that.
Yeah.
I worked at Tognotti's Auto World in Sacramento, which you may or may not know of, and used to be pretty much all sprint car stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I worked there for a couple of years, and when the Outlaws would come to California, they'd, some of them would roll in there with those big trailers, and it was just, people were more impressed with the trailers than they were the car.
Yeah.
I want to see the car or the trailer. We'll look at the car later.
Sure. Yeah. No, I remember Tognotti. I was reading in Jack Hewitt's book about Mike Andrietta worked there, right?
Yeah. Mike Andrietta, Tommy Hunt, Dwayne Starr, and myself. We were all four. Tommy and I were hired about the same time, but Mike, Andrietta, and Dwayne ran that thing for a long time, and then they hired Tommy and I, and it was four of us for a couple of years.
Well, and what was so cool about your story with Morrie is you started racing for him, and then, things happen. Guys go their own separate ways, but then you came back. And also what's really cool is one of your sons, also Doug, was also a part of the team as well. Kind of that, a strong theme that are in some of these anthology episodes is that once you were a part of Williams, you were forever a member of the Williams family, and still to this day.
Yeah, that's very true. And if you're not a part of the Williams family, it was your choice.
Sure.
To not be, you pretty much, like still today, I don't do much for them, but I go to their shop. I'm over there a couple of days every week, hanging around and maybe helping tighten some bolts or do something,
Yeah. It's definitely some special people, and I'm so glad that you were able to take some time and tell me of the. I love stories, I love history, and I love that first person view stories as well, the eyewitness accounts. And I mean, is there any stories that you can think of that were touching or moving or special to you that I didn't ask about?
Oh. No, not that I can really recall. The only other, another quick story, if you will, was Morrie and Katie's first date.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Another origin story.
Another origin. Yeah, Katie will probably shoot me, but the first date, Morrie he had a lot of different girlfriends for a while, and then along came Katie one day, and we were going to Bakersfield. And so, nobody really knew her. She didn't know us, but we were typical racers. And anyway, we get to the races, and then you had to push your car up a slight incline from the pits all along the back straightaway up to turn 3 and that's where you kind of entered the track.
Okay.
And so it's me and Morrie and Katie, and I can't remember. There might have been one other guy, but anyway, Katie, we start pushing the car, and I was sitting in it, and Morrie hollered at Katie, says, "Hey," he says, "come over here and help us push." Yeah, so she always talks about her first date with Morrie was pushing a race car.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
She must have enjoyed it so much she stuck around for the whole whole deal.
You bet. She stuck around, and she's obviously well known for baking her cookies.
Yes.
And that's probably why I'm a few pounds overweight still today from eating too many of those damn cookies.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Well, Doug, it's been so great. I appreciate you giving your time to me, and I can't wait to see you again, to talk to you in person. But this has just been an enjoyable conversation.
All right. Well, I've enjoyed it also. It's fun recalling memories, from good times in the past, and especially about somebody that you cared for, like Morrie Williams. So
no doubt. Well, thank you again, Doug.
You bet, Ben. Thank you.
Well, that is going to do it for this interview. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button on whatever platform you found this interview at. It really helps us grow the channel, and we greatly appreciate it. In the meantime, we'll be back with more content and interviews in the future. Be sure and have a great evening or a great rest of your day, whatever time you're listening.